Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, Chinese trade officials warned the White House raising duties on Chinese goods could drag relations to a dangerous place. What happens when the U.S. pushes tariffs beyond the brink? A recently signed U.S. law encouraging official visits to Taiwan does not sit well with Beijing. How far would China go in protecting its sovereignty and national integrity? And I catch up with the former Director General of the World Health Organization, Margaret Chan, who tells us how far China has gone in containing infectious diseases. You're watching World Insight. We begin today's program with potential trade war between China and the United States. The Trump administration is now planning to slap tariffs on up to $60 billion worth of Chinese goods. And it's also looking to file new complaints against China at the World Trade Organization. All this raising concerns of an escalating trade war. Take a look at this.
After a months-long investigation, the U.S. president says China is guilty as charged.
We have one particular problem, and I view them as a friend. I have tremendous respect for President Xi, and that's China.
The Trump administration says China is conducting a state-run scheme to steal intellectual property, forcing technology transfers. He says as a result, the U.S. needs to implement tariffs on Chinese imports. He also wants to impose more curbs on Chinese investment in the U.S., and Trump plans to file a complaint at the World Trade Organization. Before implementing the tariffs, the White House will hear from U.S. businesses who are going to be hit by them as soon as 15 days from now. Separately, the U.S. Treasury has up to 60 days to come up with new curbs on Chinese investment in the U.S. The U.S. says it will protect industries targeted in China's 2025 plan that seeks to be a global competitor in the industries of tomorrow, like aerospace, engineering, medicine, and robotics.
There are some areas that you just have to protect yourself from them. So you can't be in a position. They're not going to change their attitude on these things, but we can at least be in a position where U.S. industry isn't wiped out because of it. And if we don't do that, then shame on us.
Many U.S. industries, from automobiles to farmers to retailers, disagree. They know that if China retaliates, they could be hit hard. Making America great, they say, doesn't mean everyone else has to lose. Nathan King's CGTN at the White House in Washington, D.C.
China's Ministry of Commerce has responded saying the country does not want a trade war but is not afraid of one. The ministry said the U.S. has ignored China's improving intellectual property protection, and Washington violated World Trade Organization rules. Chinese trade officials said that China hoped the U.S. would pull back from the brink, make prudent decisions, and avoid dragging bilateral trade relations to a dangerous place. Will China go tit for tat with higher duties on U.S. goods? Let's listen to Mr. Cui Tiankai, the Chinese ambassador to the United States, right after this. Ambassador Cui Tiankai, welcome to our program.
Thank you. It's always nice to talk to you.
Great to have you, sir. The first question is, are we heading for a trade war, United States and China?
We don't want to have a trade war with the United States or with anybody else, but we are not afraid of it. If somebody tries to impose a trade war on us, we will fight.
How will China fight back? What do you think are some of the most effective way to fight back for China?
We will do whatever we can to defend our legitimate interest. We will also do whatever we can to safeguard the open global trading system. And I think this also serves the long-term interest of the United States itself.
So that means China going to levy heavy tariff on agricultural products imported from the United States?
We'll see what they are going to do, then we'll decide what we will do.
Some of the arguments coming from the U.S. side, Mr. Ambassador.
Let me assure them, let me assure those people who intend to fight a trade war, we will certainly fight back. We will retaliate. If people want to play tough, we will play tough with them and see who will last longer.
One of the most important things, Mr. Ambassador, is this the beginning of something, or is this going to be the end of something? Some say this is an action taken by the White House as a negotiation tactic. Others say this is absolutely related to the very root of this nature of relations between China and the United States, which is rivalry, which is competition. What do you think?
Well, as far as a possible trade war is concerned, we never wanted to start. But if somebody imposes a trade war on us, we'll fight to the end. As for the overall China-US relationship, we always believe that the right approach is to base ourselves on better mutual respect and expand our cooperation, manage possible differences in a constructive way, and achieve win-win outcome. We still follow this approach, and we hope there will be reciprocity on the U.S. side.
But the U.S. side, Mr. Ambassador, is arguing the other way around. They are saying China is stealing the U.S. technologies, and also China is taking advantage of the trade surplus against the United States for decades for itself to rise.
I think such accusations are totally groundless. China encourages innovation. Chinese laws protect intellectual property rights. This applies to Chinese companies and American companies and other companies alike. We will do our utmost to make sure that intellectual property rights are protected, whether they are from Chinese companies or American companies. At the same time, I hope people here would understand, would realize people in China and people in other developing countries are also fully capable of innovation. They should not believe that they have a monopoly over innovation and everybody else is just stealing from them. I think this is a kind of a discrimination.
Is it discrimination only, or discrimination plus arrogance?
Yes, I think you are right. And this is a recipe for trouble.
At this point, Mr. Ambassador, as far as we understand, that there are disagreements in Washington as well. For example, some of the very important business communities in the U.S. disagree with the White House when it comes to punishing China with heavy tariffs. Meanwhile, U.S. allies, many of them do not agree with the U.S. approach so far yet, either. Do you think whatever the U.S. is going to do, is it going to be as effective as a quote-unquote wants it to be?
I think it's quite clear that very often people have different perceptions of where their best interests lie. And the key is to identify common interests, to work together, to expand our common interests, and achieve a win-win outcome. You see, people always want to have a bigger piece of the pie. So let's work together to make the pie bigger, so everybody could have a bigger piece. This is a constructive and cooperative approach. And if people follow a disruptive approach, then the piece of pie people already have might be gone. So nobody would be a winner.
But Mr. Ambassador, we see the current White House seem to take different approaches at different times and changing their faces quite frequently, if we could use a Chinese ancient drama phrase. On the one hand, as a candidate, it's about punishing China. China, the name has been repeated and mentioned many times in the speeches. Then coming into the White House, there seems to be a softer approach toward China and different kinds of discussions and talks and meetings. And now, once again, taking very tough actions against China on what China believes as groundless basis. How do you understand the logic of the current White House, and how do you, as an ambassador of the China to the United States, make things work?
I think people have to explain their own logic to others. But it's clear that in today's world, cooperation will benefit everybody. confrontation will hurt everybody. This is quite clear.
So, is China and the United States already on a confrontation road, you think, Mr. Ambassador?
You see, we always advocate the idea of building up a new model of international relations, and together with everybody else to build a community of mankind for a shared future. This is our philosophy. This is our basic approach to international relations, including our relations with the United States. And we still stick to this. And I hope people in the U.S. would have a better understanding of China's approach and will make the best choice. Actually, this is a choice between cooperation and confrontation, between constructiveness and disruptiveness, between win-win and lose-lose. I hope everybody will have really a good understanding of where their best interests lie. The long-term interests of both the Chinese people and the American people. If we have these long-term interests in mind, the choice is clear.
China might be the one who is bearing more of the collateral damage while the United States is suffering less. What do you say?
I think a unilateral approach, protectionist approach, or a trade war will not help anybody because it makes no economic sense. It makes no political sense either. So the end result will be hurting everybody. It will certainly affect the daily life of the American middle-class people. It will affect the balance sheet of American companies. It will affect indexes of the financial market. It will undermine people's confidence in the long-term economic prospects. I don't think anybody can gain anything from it.
Do you think the current White House would care about that as long as there is a good result in the midterm election?
I think that this is a good question. You could ask them at the White House press conference.
I will do that if I can. Mr. Ambassador, another issue is about Taiwan.
Yes.
Taiwan Travel Act, just signed. Some
Yes.
suggest it is going to be devastating. Others say there is still room for maneuver. Mr. Ambassador, what do you say?
We are firmly opposed to this kind of a behavior, to this kind of a legislation in the U.S. We have made this absolutely clear to the U.S. side. And we will certainly take whatever action necessary to defend our national interest. I think the people here have to understand on matters of principle, on matters that concerns China's sovereignty and territorial integrity and national unification. There's no room for concession. Our position is consistent and firm. In other words, on matters of principle, we never blink.
When you say never blink, it reminds people of the anti-secession law China has right now. In it, there are several things related to taking non-peaceful means to resolve the problem. Do you think China would take that road?
We certainly will abide by our own law.
As simple as that.
Yes, that's very clear and very simple indeed.
Now we see Chinese fleet are already going into the Taiwan Strait. That we know, according to media reports. What do you think will be the next step if things are getting worse, according to what the Chinese central government thinks?
You see, our national defense policy is of a defensive nature. This has not changed. But certainly China has every right, like any other country in the world, to defend its own national interest.
How are you spending your time, Mr. Ambassador, here in Washington, D.C.? I would assume you are having a very busy time. How much of it you have to devote it to trade? How much of it you have to devote it to Taiwan issue? How much of it you have to build the fundamental relationship with both the American people and also the American politicians, either at the Capitol Hill or in the White House? I would assume you are having a very busy schedule these days, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, we are always busy here. And I think my whole mission here is to do whatever I can to help keep the relationship between China and the United States on a positive, constructive, and stable track. That's why we are talking to Americans of all walks of life. We are talking to people in the government, outside of the government, in the business community, in the media think tanks. And what I enjoy most is to go and visit different American states and cities and towns, talk to the ordinary American people. They are kind people, they are nice people. Like the Chinese, they are optimistic, they are confident, and they are friendly.
Certainly that is reciprocal in a way.
Of course, of course. I have full confidence in the mutual understanding and friendship between our two great peoples. Whatever others might do, they cannot stop this.
Mr. Ambassador, you have been instrumental in working for the possibilities of the two heads of state, both from China and the United States, to talk to one another on the phones for many times, and certainly arranging their meetings as well. You've been contributing to that. But it seems no matter how sweet the words were then, things are not necessarily matching up.
You see, relations between China and the United States is maybe the most important bilateral relationship in the world. So this is a very large cause. And guidance from the top leadership, communication and coordination between our two presidents have played a key role in maintaining this relationship on the right track. Whatever we do in the embassy is to implement the consensus between our heads of state and serve the best interests of our two peoples. And we'll continue to do whatever we can.
Given the current circumstances, do you think the two heads of state will once again talk to one another on the phone or in other occasions?
I think our two heads of states have maintained a very close contact with each other by bilateral visits, meetings, and phone calls and exchange of correspondence. I'm sure they will continue to do that. And the relationship needs that.
Mr. Ambassador, talking about China-U.S. relations, some say what the Trump administration now is doing, not necessarily following international rules, disregard some of the previous best record when it comes to bilateral, multilateral history, is playing the role of the best ally of China when it comes to China's rise in the world. Do you think that is the case?
You see, our goal is to build a new type of international relations and build a community of mankind for a shared future. So if China is rising, we want to rise with everybody else, especially the vast number of developing countries. And that's what China has been doing all the time, and will continue to do that. We believe there's no zero-sum game in international relations. We should all aim at win-win outcome.
But Mr. Ambassador, if you look at the recent history, when two of the world's countries are being the strongest, that was the Cold War. So if China continues to rise while the U.S. continues to lose its credibility in the world, it is destined, some say, that we're facing some very similar situation, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, I don't think today's world is the same as in the past. And today's China is certainly different from previous so-called global powers. We are advocating a very new approach. And together with other countries, including the United States, we should write a new page in the history of mankind.
Mr. Ambassador, China just wrapped up its so-called two sessions, the political season. China has set up its own plans for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
How do you think, Mr. Ambassador, at the very beginning of implementing this plan, the outside pressure, such as that, coming from the United States in terms of bilateral relations, might impact China's future directions and China's own plan and blueprint?
You see, the 19th Party Congress last October presented us with a new blueprint for China's development going forward for the next few decades and even longer. So China will continue to follow its own path of peaceful development. China will continue to follow an approach of opening for mutual benefits. Whatever others might do, they will not be able to change China's goal and China's cause. Of course, we certainly want to cooperate with others, including the United States, to achieve a win-win outcome, to make the world better for everybody. more peaceful, more stable, more prosperous.
Mr. Ambassador, the spring is coming. Cherry is blossoming in the near future in Washington, D.C. And yet, Mr. Ambassador, it seems that you're going to have some very challenging days, weeks, hopefully not months ahead. Are you ready?
Well, actually, yesterday we had a big snow in Washington, D.C. But today, when the sun comes out, the snow is melting. And hopefully very soon we'll have the cherry blossom here. So I hope there's a similar kind of a climate change in the relationship between China and the United States. We will be able to overcome the difficulties and open up new opportunities and better prospects for both countries.
Mr. Ambassador, Ambassador Cui Tiankai, the Chinese ambassador to the United States, what a pleasure, sir, to talk to you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure for me.
I hope next time it is the spring really coming. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Really appreciate it. Earlier, that was our exclusive interview of CGTN with Ambassador Cui Tiankai, the Chinese ambassador to the United States. Stay with us here on World Insight. Still to come on our program. China cries foul over the U.S.-Taiwan Travel Act, which promotes official exchanges with Taiwan. How far has China gone in protecting its national integrity? Also, I got some answers in an interview with Zhang Zhijun, the former director of the Taiwan Affairs Office of the State Council, right after this break. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. This program coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. U.S. President Donald Trump signed the Taiwan Travel Act, which encourages officials of all levels to meet their counterparts, so-called in Taiwan, and vice versa. U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Alex Wang has visited Taipei following the signing of the U.S. law. China opposed the act, saying using the island as a political bargaining chip to settle trade disputes is a great mistake, and China has zero tolerance for any attempt to undermine its sovereignty and territorial integrity. China's government work report this year not only uses the phrase peaceful development of relations across the Taiwan Strait, but also emphasizes reunification. That word. Has China, the Chinese central government, toughened its policy on Taiwan? I spoke with Zhang Zhijun, the former director of the Taiwan Affairs Office of the State Council. Let's listen in. Mrs. Zhang, welcome to CGTN. In the government work report, when it comes to Taiwan issue, two things have been mentioned. One is peaceful development. That has been mentioned many times before, but this time it's also talking about reunification. What does that mean?
We certainly want peaceful development across Taiwan Strait on the 1992 consensus. It's important that we will not blur the direction that we're marching for. That is the ultimate reunification of the country. So I think that the peaceful development of the cross-strait is also a kind of a gradual process moving toward that goal.
But does that mean that China, particularly the mainland authority, is going to get much stronger, even using military force in order to achieve that goal? Many wondered.
First of all, I must emphasize the very important point of the nature of the cross-strait relations. It's a relation within one country, within China. It's not the relation between two countries, or one China, one Taiwan. And the people across the strait are all of us same family. Yes. They are not foreigners. They are part of our family. That is why we want to try every means to work for a peaceful unification of the country. That is our sincere desire. But that does not mean that if the sovereignty and territorial integrity was threatened and the country was put in the kind of situation that it would split because of the secessionist move by some certain forces in Taiwan, then we have to act.
Including military reaction?
Well, certainly, yeah. For that issue, you could look at the anti-secession law that was adopted in 2005.
Talking about the relations across Taiwan Straits, China recently has put forward 31 measures by 31 party and government organizations for benefits of the compatriots from Taiwan. I just wonder how this process has been. It must be quite a big project to work on. I heard it has got, Minister Zhang, a great response. Somebody even called you on the phone and say, can my kid get enrolled in many universities? So tell me about how it came into being. I'm sure it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, sure. It has taken some time to prepare those 31 measures. But it's the reflection of the work of my office and the ministries and organs of the central government and the party, that they've taken actual measures to implement the policy direction of the party, the 19th Party Congress. That is, we'll take the initiative to let our Taiwan compatriots share the development opportunities in the mainland, and would provide equal opportunities for the people, for our compatriots, especially the young people, to come here to study, to work, to live. So those 31 measures are the reflection of the measures of the efforts we've taken to implement the policy direction of the party.
I see. Which one among all of them do you think it could be more significant than the others, or even the most significant?
Well, I will not identify one because the 31 is a package. It's a package of a much larger package. Okay, it's not 31. It's not the end. No, it's the beginning. I've stated that we will continue to study the situation and also to examine the desire of the people and of the companies, enterprises that are working here from Taiwan. See what their desires are, and then we'll stipulate more, come up with more measures in that direction.
Is this about putting money to buy the hearts of Taiwan?
I don't think so. I don't think so. It's not to buy the hearts of the people. It's to show the feelings of a family, of the family compassion. So the unification that we aim for is not the unification of the country in form. That is important, certainly. It's more important, I think. It's the heart and mind of the people. So we are driving for the union of the hearts.
Beautifully said.
Okay.
But Minister Zhang, what if some other countries and parties trying to use the Taiwan issue as a bargaining chip toward China? Is China ready for the worst scenarios?
We are prepared, I think, for all kind of scenario. One China principle is the political foundation of the state-to-state relations. So if you look at the statements for the establishment of diplomatic tie between China and other countries, you'll see that one China principle is there because it constitutes the fundamental political foundation of that.
You're saying if they're not following that, there's no political and diplomatic relations?
If that principle is compromised, that will certainly bring harm to the state-to-state relations. That is what I mean.
Finally, before we go, Minister Zhang, on a lighter note, you've been devoting your hearts and minds 5 years to the issue of Taiwan affairs. Of course, there are a lot of ups and downs over the years. What do you think is the biggest takeaway for you, Minister Zhang?
More confidence for the continued peaceful development of the cross-strait relations toward the goal of the reunification, because we are much more developed, stronger, with a strong leader leading our party and the country forward.
That was Mr. Zhang Zhijun, the Director of the Office of Taiwan Affairs with the State Council, talking to us. Stay with us here on World Insight. Still to come on our program. Listen in on a one-on-one conversation with the former Director General of the World Health Organization, Margaret Chan, the first Chinese to serve the post, who shares her expert opinion on China's healthcare system right after this break. This is World Insight, and I'm Tian Wei. Margaret Chan, the former Director General of the World Health Organization, was the first Chinese to hold that position on the sidelines of China's 2 sessions. I asked her about her insights into China's public health system. As someone who has invested her career in improving public health, she said China has matured a lot since the SARS outbreak in the year 2003 and has since learned many lessons which should be shared with other countries. She said that China now is one of the best countries in preventing and containing infectious diseases. What a transformation that you have made from the Director General of the World Health Organization now to a CPPCC member. How do you see your transformation so far?
I agree with you. It is a very, very interesting transformation.
Yes, indeed.
As the Director General of the World Health Organization, in the past 10 years, I can see my experience there, in terms of facilitating member countries. I have 194 member states as bosses, and facilitating their engagement in negotiation to support them to arrive at consensus. That's one of my major roles. And of course, as a technical officer, involved in supporting countries, giving them advice and technical support in improving the health of their people. So those 2 experiences as a facilitator, coordinator, as well as a technical administrator, I think those 2 experiences are very valuable for me as a member of the CPPCC.
Beginning from that UN General Assembly back in 2015.
Right.
Chinese President Xi, with the administration that he is leading, is becoming ever more visible on the international stage because you personally interact with him and his team. The styles that he has, and also the way he and his colleagues are trying to push forward the agenda. What would you say?
Well, it is presumptuous of me to give an assessment on President Xi.
Well, you work with him.
Yes, indeed. I met him quite a number of times, and I work with him and his team in healthcare reform, and also I watch closely the poverty alleviation in China. I have to say, he's a leader. Not only is he visionary, he is courageous, and he is committed to serving the people of China. And he's a leader that walks his talk. Political leaders worldwide, they make a lot of promises.
That we know.
And he's one of the very few political leaders that honor his promises.
Dr. Chan, another person you work very closely with on the issue related to China and the world, can I say from China, is Professor Peng Liyuan, who has been a very outspoken person regards to the healthcare issue, particularly to AIDS, HIV/AIDS. That, of course, is another human rights issue as well.
That's right.
So how do you see the growing influence of Professor Peng in terms of making sure the issues that you are pushing together are already coming to quite a successful stage?
Well, Tian Wei, I still remember we together worked with Madam Peng on the AIDS issue.
Absolutely.
In fact, you know, talking about the very active contribution of Madam Peng, I have to say, she was, you know, actually working on HIV/AIDS long before she became the First Lady of China. And she continued to play an active role after she became First Lady.
Professor Peng, always very low profile.
Yes, indeed.
When you say thank you for your contribution, I personally heard that you said to her, and she said, that's all I should do. That's all I should do.
And to have a beautiful, gracious, and humble First Lady, I think that wins her a lot of respect from the country, from the Chinese people in China. And that's why they give her a nickname, I heard. And they even have a song about her and also President Xi, 习代代还有就是彭妈妈, 是吧?
Yes,
that is a nice way to show people's respect for President Xi and for Madam Peng.
We know China is a country of 1.4 billion. So medical services, extremely important, but limited resources as a result of historical reasons. When you have people all want to squeeze into the best hospitals in China coming from all over the country, you see a crisis going on every day in the hospital. There is still a lack of ways to change, in real essence, this picture.
In fact, China has started work in promoting the training of family physicians, family doctor, or in Chinese they call it 全科医生. Without sufficient number of family physicians, Beijing community, serving the community, serving the village, you will continue to see many, many people going to big hospitals with minor problems. So this is a big issue that China is addressing. And of course, you know, China is a vast country, and the unbalanced development is seen most acutely at the village level. How can we, number one, give family medicine doctor the right respect and right status and right salary to encourage young people to go into that discipline and serve the vast majority of the people is extremely important.
But this would take a long time, Dr. Chen. It would take a lot of time. Will people have that patience for that waiting list?
Health is the business of everybody, not just the government. So on an individual level, family level, community level, and the government as well as the industry, we all must play our part to support the government. As I said, just looking at the healthcare financing and the healthcare coverage based on primary healthcare in the last, 10 years?
That's right.
It has gone from very low coverage to over 95%. So I have to say, the healthcare reform in China is unprecedented. Its achievement is recognized by world leaders in healthcare, and I wish that they do understand there are big challenges, there are difficult issues that they need to continue to work on. And as a Chinese now, and I've been asked to continue to provide advice to the government in healthcare reform. It is indeed. I look forward to working with my fellow colleagues, both in Hong Kong as well as in the mainland, and to improve the health of people.
Before we go, Dr. Chan, I do have a question. Long willing to ask you. On the one hand, you are a very strong leader when you're working for WHO and some of the other entities. On the other hand, you're a very loving person. Even love dancing Xinjiang dances, the Uyghur dance. I saw you many times. And your colleagues love you. How to combine all of these roles together at any time? That is one magic you have when it comes to leadership. Dr. Chan.
Tian Wei, doesn't matter what job you are holding, whatever you are doing, there will be pressures, there will be stress, there is commitment. As long as you are clear on what you should be doing, what are your priorities, you just keep going at it. And do not be distracted by noises or by people's criticism. We need to listen to constructive criticism, but there are far too many noises now. So remaining focused, find a good way to distress and enjoy life and enjoy, working with people.
All right. I guess I'll, from now on, try to learn some Xinjiang dance from you, Dr. Chan. But what a pleasure seeing you once again, Dr. Chan.
It's nice to see you again.
All the best. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is our conversation with Dr. Margaret Chan, the former Director General of the World Health Organization, a fun lady as well. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Time for a weekend break. Have a great one, everyone.